Imagine waking up one day with the unsettling realization that many of your choices were never truly yours. The career you chase, the people you desire, the habits you defend, the fears you can't explain. Imagine sensing quietly, disturbingly, that something beneath your awareness has been steering your life all along. You wake up, reach for your phone, follow routines you didn't consciously design, and feel pulled toward goals that somehow no longer feel like your own. You tell yourself you are rational, self-aware, in control. Yet a strange contradiction lingers. If you are so conscious, why do your patterns repeat? Why do you fall for the same people in different bodies? Why do you sabotage what you claim to want? Why does success feel empty and failure oddly familiar? Here's the paradox no one prepares you for. The more convinced you are that you know yourself, the more power your unconscious gains over you. You call your impulses preferences. You call your fears logic. You call your compulsions personality. But what if they are none of these? What if the desires you defend most passionately are not expressions of freedom, but symptoms of something buried, unresolved, unseen? You feel desire as hunger, attraction, ambition. It feels immediate, personal, unquestionable. Yet desire often contradicts your values. You crave what harms you. You chase what exhausts you. You long for validation from people who withhold it. And when asked why, you produce reasons that sound reasonable but feel strangely rehearsed. Have you ever stopped to ask where those reasons come from? Not the surface explanations, not the stories you tell others, but the deeper current, the emotional gravity pulling you toward certain outcomes again and again. You live in a culture that worships conscious choice. Follow your passion. Do what feels right. Trust your instincts. But what if your instincts were shaped in moments you barely remember? What if your passions were formed as coping mechanisms? What if what feels right is simply what feels familiar to your nervous system? Imagine the discomfort of realizing that your strongest desires might be echoes, unfinished conversations from childhood, unhealed wounds, unmet needs still demanding expression. And imagine how threatening that idea is. Because if your desires are unconscious, then freedom is not doing what you want. Freedom becomes something far more difficult. Understanding why you want it in the first place, you may sense resistance rising already. A subtle tightening. A voice saying, "This doesn't apply to me." That voice itself may not be as innocent as it sounds. What if your identity, your likes, dislikes, ambitions, even your moral stances, has been partially constructed to avoid a deeper pain? What if your confidence is armor, your productivity a distraction, your longing a misdirected signal? And if that's true, then another question emerges, one far more unsettling than any desire. Who would you be if your unconscious no longer needed to speak through your choices? That question hangs uncomfortably in the air, and it should, because once you sense the presence of something unseen shaping your life, you can't unsee it. The surface has cracked, and beneath it, something has been waiting to be noticed. Once the suspicion takes hold that something beneath your awareness is shaping your desires, you begin to notice how fiercely the mind resists looking deeper. This resistance is not accidental. It is the problem itself. Carl Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What he understood, and what most people quietly avoid, is that the unconscious is not a passive storage room of memories. It is an active, compensatory force. It speaks when something essential has been ignored. Your unconscious desires did not emerge randomly. They were formed at the intersection of vulnerability and adaptation. When you were young, emotionally, psychologically, you learned what brought safety, approval, or relief from pain. You learned what earned love, what avoided punishment, what numbed discomfort. These lessons didn't become thoughts. They became instincts. Nietzsche described this process as the internalization of forces that could not be expressed outwardly. When expression is denied, energy turns inward. Desire mutates. What cannot be lived consciously seeks expression symbolically, through ambition, attachment, power, pleasure, or self-destruction. This is why desire often feels irrational. It isn't designed to make sense. It's designed to resolve tension. Arthur Schopenhauer saw desire as endless striving, an insatiable will that keeps humans locked in dissatisfaction. But he missed something crucial. Desire is not just endless. It is historical. Each craving carries a psychological lineage. You are not merely wanting, you are compensating. Modern psychology confirms this in quieter terms. Attachment theory shows how unmet emotional needs become adult longings. Trauma research reveals how the nervous system repeats familiar stress patterns, mistaking predictability for safety. Cognitive psychology shows how confirmation bias protects identities formed long before reason arrived. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that humans are condemned to freedom, but what he didn't fully emphasize is how terrifying that freedom feels when unconscious patterns are mistaken for choice. To be truly free would require confronting the possibility that your desires are not commands, but clues. And then there is society itself. Aldous Huxley foresaw a culture that would not need force to control people, only pleasure, distraction, and endless stimulation. When a society feeds unconscious desire constantly, self-examination becomes inconvenient. Reflection threatens consumption. Stillness threatens identity. So the hidden problem is not that you have unconscious desires. That is inevitable. The problem is that you have been taught to obey them unquestioningly. You are encouraged to be yourself without ever asking which self is speaking. You are told to chase fulfillment without learning to distinguish hunger from healing. You are rewarded for productivity, status, and performance, even when these are elaborate ways of avoiding emptiness. And here is the deepest layer of the problem. Your unconscious does not want truth. It wants relief. It will push you toward relationships that replay old wounds, toward goals that promise worth, toward identities that protect you from shame. And it will do so convincingly, using emotion as evidence. You feel desire, so you assume it must be right. But what if desire is not a guide, only a messenger? What if it is pointing not toward what you should pursue, but toward what you have not yet faced? That question tightens the knot further. Because if this hidden force continues unchecked, it doesn't just influence your inner life. It reshapes your reality. And its consequences are far more pervasive than you think. When unconscious desires remain unseen, they do not stay contained within the mind. They leak outward, quietly, systematically. They shape the architecture of your life while you remain convinced you are choosing freely. You see the consequences not as patterns, but as isolated events. A failed relationship here, a burnout there, a sense of restlessness that never quite leaves. You call it bad luck, poor timing, the wrong people. But patterns do not emerge from chance. They emerge from repetition. Your unconscious is efficient. It uses familiarity as a compass. What feels emotionally recognizable, even if painful, registers as safe to the nervous system. This is why people return to dynamics they consciously despise. Why anxiety feels strangely like home. Why chaos can feel more comforting than peace. Neuroscience explains part of this trap. The brain is a prediction machine. It prioritizes what it knows over what is good. Dopamine reinforces anticipation, not fulfillment. The result? You chase desire not because it satisfies you, but because it keeps you moving. Wanting becomes the point. Cognitive biases quietly seal the loop. Confirmation bias filters reality to justify your cravings. Rationalization transforms impulse into narrative. Sunk cost fallacy keeps you invested in paths that no longer serve you, because abandoning them would mean admitting you were never fully in control. On a cultural level, this compounds into something darker. Entire societies are structured around unexamined desire. Status symbols replace self-worth. Busyness replaces meaning. Consumption replaces connection. You are encouraged to want more, faster, louder, without ever asking why the wanting never ends. This is not accidental. A person disconnected from their unconscious is endlessly exploitable. They seek identity through objects, validation through metrics, purpose through comparison. And the more they consume, the emptier they feel, fueling the next cycle of desire. Viktor Frankl observed that when meaning is absent, humans pursue pleasure or power as substitutes. But substitutes never satisfy. They only distract. And distraction has a cost. The cost is fragmentation. You begin to feel divided against yourself. One part wants growth. Another wants comfort. One part seeks truth. Another seeks escape. The louder the unconscious becomes, the more exhausted the conscious mind feels. Decision fatigue sets in. Numbness follows. This is how people lose their sense of agency without realizing it. They mistake impulse for intuition, compulsion for passion, reaction for choice. And slowly, something subtle erodes: responsibility. Not in the moral sense, but in the existential one. If your life feels like a series of reactions, it becomes easier to feel like a passenger, to blame circumstances, to wait for motivation, to hope clarity will arrive on its own. But clarity never arrives where avoidance reigns. The unseen consequence is not failure. It is unlived potential. The life you could have lived if your energy wasn't consumed by managing unacknowledged inner conflicts. And here is the most unsettling part. As long as these forces remain unconscious, they will continue to masquerade as you. So the question is no longer whether you are influenced by unconscious desire. The question is whether you are willing to confront it, because doing so requires something radical, not suppression, not indulgence, but rebellion. Breaking free does not begin with control. That is the first illusion to shatter. The mind that tries to dominate desire only drives it deeper underground, where it grows more symbolic, more compulsive, more dangerous. Repression does not weaken unconscious forces. It sharpens them. The rebellion begins with a quieter, more unsettling act: witnessing without obedience. Most people either indulge their desires or fight them. Both reactions keep desire in command. To rebel is to create space between impulse and action, to let the urge speak without letting it decide. Friedrich Nietzsche spoke of becoming the overman, not as a figure of domination, but as someone who could transmute instinct into creation rather than be ruled by it. This transformation does not come from denial, but from interpretation. You stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "What is this desire trying to resolve?" This single shift changes everything. When attraction arises, you observe it as information, not instruction. When ambition surges, you ask what wound it is compensating for. When fear appears, you trace its origin rather than negotiate with it. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of unconscious content into conscious awareness. What you integrate loses its power to possess you. What remains unconscious continues to act autonomously. Historical figures who broke free followed this path intuitively. Viktor Frankl, imprisoned in a concentration camp, discovered that meaning, not comfort, was the last human freedom. His desires were stripped away, and what remained was choice. Not choice over circumstances, but choice over response. This is the rebellion. Reclaiming response.it requires radical honesty. You must be willing to see how often your preferences are avoidance strategies, how your busyness protects you from stillness, how your longing for approval shields you from self-confrontation. And yes, this process destabilizes identity. That is unavoidable. When unconscious desires dissolve, roles collapse. You may feel lost for a time, but that disorientation is not regression. It is the nervous system recalibrating to a life no longer driven by reflex. Practically, rebellion looks deceptively simple. You pause. You feel. You do not act immediately. You let discomfort exist without anesthetizing it. You allow boredom without distraction. You sit with longing without chasing its object. Over time, something remarkable happens. The urgency fades. The desire reveals its message or evaporates entirely. This is not passivity. It is precision. You begin to act from clarity rather than compulsion, from values rather than cravings, from meaning rather than momentum. And with each act of conscious choice, the unconscious loses territory, not through force, but through exposure. The rebellion does not make life easier. It makes it real. And that reality prepares you for a final realization, one that reframes everything you thought you knew about desire, suffering, and freedom. At the end of all inquiry, beyond techniques and theories, a single realization waits, quiet, uncompromising, and impossible to unlearn. Your unconscious desires are not enemies to be defeated. They are not guides to be followed. They are messages from a self that adapted in order to survive. This is the truth most people never reach, because it dissolves the drama they've built their identity around. Desire loses its mystique once you see it clearly. It stops being a command and becomes a language. What you called longing was a signal. What you called obsession was a memory repeating itself. What you called passion was often unexpressed grief, fear, or unmet need wearing a more acceptable mask. And here is the paradigm shift that changes everything. You were never broken for wanting what you wanted. You were unfinished. The unconscious does not seek pleasure for its own sake. It seeks completion, resolution, integration. Every desire points backward before it points forward, toward something that once mattered and was never fully felt. This is why fulfillment never arrives when you chase the object of desire, because the object was never the point. The psyche does not heal through acquisition. It heals through understanding. Once you grasp this, a strange peace settles in. You stop waging war with yourself. You stop romanticizing impulse. You stop outsourcing meaning to future outcomes. You realize that freedom was never about eliminating desire, but about no longer being possessed by it. Jean-Paul Sartre was right in one essential way. You are responsible, not for the desires that arise, but for the meaning you assign to them. Responsibility returns. Agency returns. Not as pressure, but as power. You begin to live differently. You choose relationships not because they feel familiar, but because they are honest. You pursue goals not to prove worth, but to express values. You act not to escape discomfort, but to embody truth. And perhaps the most profound shift of all, you stop searching for yourself in what you want, because you finally understand that the self is not found at the end of desire. It is revealed in the space between impulse and action. That space is where consciousness lives. That space is where choice breathes. That space is where meaning is made. The unconscious will still speak. It always will. But now it speaks as an ally rather than a master, as history rather than destiny. And as you stand there, no longer running, no longer numbing, no longer obeying, you recognize the quiet irony that ties everything together. The moment you stop chasing desire is the moment your life becomes your own. The question that remains is not whether this truth is real. It is whether you are willing to live as if it is.